The EFF is calling for the Eskom board and executives to be fired, failing to keep the lights on consistently. The party is accusing those managing Eskom of dishonesty about the power plans in the country and the supply problems more broadly. Let's pick this up with Leigh-Ann, Mathys, EFF national spokesperson, joining us now. Leigh-Ann, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time. So let's say we fire Andre de Ruyter, the COO, and the board. What do you see as being the next steps the next day?
The next day is that we must bring back competent people that have assisted us in making sure that we haven't had rolling blackouts for a very long time. I don't think, and it's not that we don't think, but it can't be that we don't have competent people in the whole of South Africa to be able to run Eskom.
I don't know if you were able to see earlier, we had on the Public Enterprises Minister, Pravin Gordhan, who spoke at length about how many of the problems at Eskom predate the current executives. Yes, load shedding has been an issue since 2008, but at what point do you think that stops being an acceptable explanation for the crisis?
I'm even surprised Pravin is coming on to talk a whole lot of nonsense. What predate Eskom, this is a deliberate thing, and we've been saying this for a long time, and we deal with the same crises not just with Eskom but with all our SOEs, right? So we have a deliberate plan that everything in our SOEs must be destroyed, and Eskom is one of them. So Pravin coming to talk about all these problems that predates a whole lot of things, it's nonsense. Eskom ran properly at some point. We did not have these hectic levels of blackouts. So all of a sudden now there's so many problems. Everything there is deliberate. And we must come to terms with that. We must stop listening to this propaganda of Pravin. They want to privatize Eskom. So the best way to privatize, and we've been singing the song for a very long time, is to collapse everything. So Pravin, along with Cyril Ramaphosa, they are there to destroy everything. So they take us to a point in a country where we're like, we do not care, privatize, we do not care how much this is going to cost. But a basic public service like electricity, like water, cannot be privatized. We have such a huge inequality gap here in South Africa. The majority of South Africans cannot even afford to buy a loaf of bread daily. The majority of them don't even have a decent meal every single day. How on earth are they going to afford electricity? Public services must be accessible and they must be properly funded by the state. So Pravin must stop doing his PR nonsense. We know that the ANC and that is going to their conference. We know that Cyril needs money to go and bribe delegates so he can emerge again. So also all these emergency tenders that need to go out and emergency purchases of diesel, it's all pre-planned, and they come and make it like they're responding to some crisis. No, there isn't. This is a self-inflicted crisis. I don't even know what on earth Cyril Ramaphosa is even coming back here to do and to fix what. I actually wish those British could even keep him there as part of the repatriation that they should be giving here to South Africa.
But what proof do you have, Leigh-Ann, of a plot by the president and the minister, as you say, to basically use Eskom to their benefit in this crisis?
What proof do you have that Pravin and Cyril, when they come and tell you those stories every day about crises at Eskom, do you know when our members of parliament go on oversight visits to these Medupi power plants, do you know how the people who work there are silenced? People at Eskom are silenced because they are scared to use their jobs. We have been telling you what a bulldog and a devil Pravin is in how he's operating these SOEs. We have lost so many capable black CEOs and executives because of him, because their agenda is exactly that. So the proof is in the pudding. Look at the collapse of all our state-owned entities. It is there. People are not going to talk because they are going to lose jobs. That Pravin is... let me not even start.
Let me ask you about this upcoming meeting, right, that's going to happen now. Our politics editor was saying to us that the president, you say you don't see the point in him having come back at this point. Tomorrow, by the way, we're hearing he's going to chair a cabinet meeting that's going to be discussing, among other issues, this Eskom crisis. You're saying what we need to see is the sacking of the management at Eskom. If that were to happen, linked to my earlier question to you, and you said you want competent people employed. What would those competent people, do you think, have to do immediately to bring us back out of this disaster?
Well, immediately we need to work the power stations. The issue there is it's not even huge. It's the maintenance. Our national chairperson has gone on those oversight visits that we do. So what has been going on at Eskom is just deliberate. So we need people who are not going to follow the agenda of Pravin and Ramaphosa, who want to collapse our state-owned entities, number one. So immediately, coal, and we need to have a mixture of state-owned. This thing of buying independent power producers. If independent power producers can produce power, why are we incapable of doing it as a whole state and a state that monopolizes the market? So there's no issue. And actually, while they're there having an urgent cabinet meeting, they should fire all themselves as well, because they are not helping us. So we're just going to keep the solution here is that the ANC and Ramaphosa must go, and that is also something that must be.
But that's unlikely to happen.
And if South Africans, are actually serious, we're always just looking for solutions that are just going to go round and round in circles, but we are dealing with the same executives. So the agenda is the same. So even if that Ramaphosa decides that the executives must go and the board must go, which we know that he won't do that because he's a bloody coward, right? And he has his own agenda to be able to do that as well.
So Leigh, we're running out of time.
We still have an executive that does not have political will to be able to fix the state-owned, our state-owned entities, because their agenda is to destroy it and their agenda is to privatize it. So this is the time South Africans must stand up and say, no, enough is enough.
Just on that point, Leigh, because we've got about a minute, I think, or less left, I wanted to ask you about, you said if the ANC itself as a government would have to go, that's not going to happen tomorrow after the cabinet meeting. At the very least, it might happen through an election. We're 2 years away from that. What do you see as the role of the EFF and other opposition parties then on the energy crisis issue in the interim period between now and if indeed South Africans decide through a popular vote in the election that they've had enough? What do you see as your role? What would you be able to do to agitate for action on the power crisis?
Well, number one, it's not true that it's impossible that the ANC cannot be removed from government now. The people govern. And if South Africans were actually serious that they are sick and tired of incompetency, that ANC and Cyril Ramaphosa would have to go, because we can shut down this country and they can resign. Would not be the first time that this has happened in the history of the world. There's no need for us to wait for 2 years. If South Africa really has had enough and are fed up of doing that. So it's not true that there's any need for us to wait for 2 years to go even to an election. The people govern and they must start governing.
My point speaks more broadly, I suppose, to the fact that we've already seen protests, some even led by the unions, that even included the issue of the electricity crisis, yet there hasn't been, shall we say, a more sustained level of public pressure or even led by the opposition on the government on this issue that you believe, if it were to happen, would lead ultimately to the fall of the ANC government. Why do you think that is?
I'm talking to just South Africans generally, because even if political parties lead from the front, whether it's and also the unions or NGOs or civil organizations, we need South Africans to get out of their docile stage of accepting the nonsense that is dished out to them. And not everything needs to be led by political parties or civil organizations or even unions, because we are always questioned about our motives. South Africans need to get out there, go and occupy union buildings and say we are not leaving until we have a competent government there, and we do not have to wait for 2 years. And this is the point that I'm trying to make. Our solutions can't always be around elections and that government can't be moved in between while they are serving their term. No, it's not true. They can.
Leigh-Ann,
people must govern.
Mathys, good to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon.